Hey guys, I promised last week that I was going to answer the question, when is it time for churches to rebel against a government's order of not holding church services, and it was time for us to meet again? And I'm speaking specifically really about our current situation revolving around the coronavirus pandemic. I again refer you to the concepts of social pressures and the realities of where communities in general are with things. As we stated this was stated so well to me just recently. It would be extremely disrespectful of us to start prematurely because of the disrespect that we would have to those who are at high risk and the disrespect of those who are really nervous about the effects of the virus. And to blow off their feelings of that portion of the society would be very disrespectful. And I thought that's well said. That's not what the body of Christ wants to be known for sure. Now, though we do see an obvious trend now where people are growing less concerned and more eager to resume life as normal, we also know that we want to be respectful of our community and the feelings that they're having. Yet knowing that, we also see a trend among some politicians that seem to want to continue the social distancing regulations. And also stated before, we don't know their exact reasoning for doing so, nor do we know the exact short-term or long-term effects that going back to life will have if we go back to life as normal, nor do we know the effects that it will have if we continue to keep people constrained. So we might make some educated guesses regarding those, and some of those are going to be right, and some of those guesses are going to be wrong, but we don't know for sure at this moment any of the results of those things. Yet at times, we look at this and feel that this is really, can we call it an outreach of power? We might feel that way. And maybe it is. I'll leave that up to your own discretion as to whether or not it is. But should we as churches rebel against this right now and just go back to meeting like we did before? Well, the best answer I can give you from logic is really this. I think we have a real problem on our hands when we see very specific attacks on religious services by governing leaders, which are not being imposed on other non-religious events or groups. That would be a major problem. And I do realize that this has happened, that exact thing has happened in some local regions. But on the whole, at this point, what we are seeing, even though it's vague and sometimes it's really confusing and contradicting regulations, we certainly could not say that the regulations are targeted towards religious gatherings. Concert goers, sports lovers, even large parties and celebrations are all currently being held at bay. And with that being the case, if a church decides to break protocol at this exact time and ignore all social distancing regulations, they're setting themselves up for a great deal of scrutiny. Social scrutiny and legal scrutiny. And they would need to decide, churches would need to decide, not only financially if it's a wise direction, but also morally. In other words, is this what Christ would have done, would be the question we should ask. Or do we see a precedence of Christ obeying governing leaders, even by doing things like pulling money out of a fish's mouth to pay taxes, and thereby winning the respect and admiration of such leaders, to the point that some of the leaders said about Jesus, "I find nothing wrong with this guy." And they tried to free him from injustices. Wouldn't it be great if the church were able to influence the minds of the leaders of this country because they have such a well-balanced and thoughtful and caring approach to their communities? And the governing leaders see that, and they go out of their way to help the body of Christ. Daniel, he also showed the same thing. King Darius, after he found out that Daniel was the one that was going to be going to the lion's den, King Daniel did everything he could to try to stop it. That's how much respect the king had for the way that Daniel did life. Most likely because the level of respect and appropriate behavior that Daniel had towards the king and his laws. Daniel 6:21 actually records the words from Daniel to the king when the king was opened the door to see if Daniel had survived the lion's den. Listen to what it says, Daniel 6:21. Daniel answered the king. He said, "King, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They haven't hurt me because I was found innocent in God's sight. Nor have I done any wrong before you, your majesty." Daniel didn't do wrong before the king. And the king respected that and realized that to be true. Yet we know that Daniel never compromised on his values or what was right either. The two of those can, in most cases, work together. And God can rescue us from the grasp of the lions at the same time when we work to keep those things working together. Now, if someone says to me, "Yeah, okay, Keith, I get it, but we as the church are commanded to assemble together, and the governors are currently stopping that." And plus, add the fact that the Constitution says we have the right to freedom of religion. Well, to someone who says that, I have these words to say. I agree with you. That is what we are currently being asked to do. But I am excited to say that God already had this completely figured out and worked out. If you want to get together, join a Zoom Bible study. If you want to worship God on Sunday morning, go to Facebook Live. I know it's not the same, I get that. I really do. But we certainly are not breaking any of God's commands. And Lord willing, we're gaining the favor of our leaders by handling things appropriately. And besides that, there are countless stories about how God is using this temporary situation to attract the world to Him and to bring people to Jesus Christ. That rocks. I don't want this thing to go on much longer, but I can tell you this. Right now, I am going to use what God has given us to bring Him glory and to pray for our leaders and to pray for their minds. And that's the approach I encourage each of us to take at this time. To God be the glory. Oh, and by the way, we're still working on some things to keep us all as connected as possible. And when we can make those happen, we'll let you know about them. If you haven't participated in the table out front and being able to bring a gift and exchange it and write a note, that's a great way to connect with people. Please do that. What a fun privilege we have to be able to do things like that. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.